The massive alien warship hung in space like a predator waiting to strike. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly shine that human sensors had never detected before. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant and watched the enemy fleet arrange themselves into attack formation. He had seen this moment coming for 3 years now, ever since the Galactic Council had first made contact with Earth and delivered their ultimatum: submit or face destruction. Earth had chosen a different path. The Council believed humans were primitive and weak. They thought a species that had only recently discovered faster than light travel would bow down immediately when faced with their superior technology. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Jake looked at the tactical display showing 73 alien vessels surrounding his small fleet of 12 human ships. The numbers did not favor humanity, but numbers had never been everything in war. His species had learned that lesson many times throughout their bloody history. Lieutenant Amy Chen called out from her station with calm professionalism. The enemy ships were powering up their weapons systems and moving into standard attack positions. Jake recognized the formation from the tactical data Earth had stolen from a crashed alien probe 2 years ago. The Council followed predictable patterns because they had been fighting the same way for thousands of years. Nobody had challenged them successfully in living memory, so they saw no reason to change their methods. Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the destroyer Thunderchild on the fleet's right flank. Her ship was smaller than the Valiant, but carried experimental railgun systems that Earth's best engineers had designed specifically for this battle. She waited for Jake's signal while her crew ran final checks on weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. The tension on her bridge was thick enough to cut with a knife, but every person at their station knew what was at stake. If Earth lost this battle, then humanity would spend the rest of its existence under alien rule. High Admiral Zekthor commanded the Council fleet from his flagship Eternal Wisdom. He was a towering insectoid being whose species had conquered the stars when humans were still living in caves. The idea that these primitives would resist the Council's authority seemed absurd to him. He had fought in dozens of campaigns across the galaxy, and never encountered a species foolish enough to challenge Council superiority. Today would be a quick lesson in humility for the humans, followed by their inevitable surrender. The Admiral opened a communication channel to the human fleet. His translators converted his clicking speech into words the primitives could understand. He offered them one final chance to avoid destruction. Surrender now and accept Council rule peacefully or be annihilated where they stood. It was standard procedure before any engagement, and Zekthor expected the usual result: fear and capitulation. Jake Morrison's face appeared on the alien flagship's main screen. The human commander looked directly at Zekthor with eyes that showed no fear whatsoever. Instead, there was something cold and calculating in that gaze, something that reminded the Admiral of apex predators from his own home world. The human spoke in a quiet voice that somehow carried more weight than any shouted threat could have managed. "Turn your ships around and leave our system. You will not get another chance." Those were the only words Jake offered before cutting the communication link. Zekthor felt a strange sensation running through his exoskeleton, something he had not experienced in many years. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling as doubt. He shook it off and gave the order to attack. The Council fleet opened fire with energy weapons that had obliterated countless enemy vessels over millennia of warfare. Bright lances of concentrated power streaked across the darkness of space toward the human ships. The aliens expected to see those primitive vessels torn apart immediately. Instead, their weapons splashed harmlessly against flickering energy shields that should not have existed on such crude craft. Earth had reverse-engineered shield technology from captured alien equipment and improved it. Jake watched the enemy fire wash over his fleet without causing any damage. Now came the interesting part. He gave the order and 12 human ships launched their first wave of missiles. The aliens saw conventional nuclear warheads on their sensors and relaxed slightly. Their shields could handle such primitive explosives easily. The missiles detonated against the Council's defensive barriers exactly as expected and accomplished absolutely nothing. Zekthor allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. These humans were even less advanced than intelligence reports had suggested. Their most powerful weapons could not even scratch Council shields. He prepared to order a second volley that would finish this pointless battle. Then his tactical officer started screaming about shield failures across the entire fleet. The second wave of human missiles had followed right behind the first. These warheads contained no explosives at all. Instead, they released powerful electromagnetic pulses specifically designed to overload and crash alien shield generators. In the 3 years since first contact, Earth scientists had studied every piece of Council technology they could get their hands on. They had found the weaknesses in systems that had gone unchanged for centuries. Now those weaknesses became lethal vulnerabilities. Before the Council ships could restore their shields, the third wave arrived. These were not missiles but solid tungsten rods accelerated to incredible velocities by magnetic rails. No guidance systems, no explosives, no complex technology at all. Just heavy metal moving at speeds that turned simple mass into devastating kinetic energy. The rods punched through unshielded alien hulls like bullets through paper. 3 Council cruisers lost their main engines in the first 10 seconds. 2 more sustained critical damage to their weapons arrays. Chaos erupted across the Council fleet. Ships that had been in perfect formation moments ago now scattered in all directions, trying to avoid the relentless human bombardment. Their elegant tactics fell apart as captains who had never experienced real combat made panicked decisions. Some tried to retreat while others attempted to press the attack. The result was a confused mess that Jake's forces exploited ruthlessly. Lisa Hayes brought the Thunderchild screaming through the alien formation at maximum speed. Her railguns fired continuously, each shot calculated to disable rather than destroy. Dead ships were just debris, but crippled vessels required rescue and resources. She wanted to make this battle as expensive as possible for the Council. Her crew worked with practiced efficiency, loading and firing their weapons faster than the aliens could respond. Jake coordinated the entire human fleet with the precision of a surgeon. He had studied every historical battle Earth had ever fought and learned from them all. He knew when to press an advantage and when to pull back. He understood that warfare was not just about destroying the enemy, but about breaking their will to fight. Every disabled Council ship broadcasting distress signals hurt alien morale more than another explosion would have. The battle lasted 47 minutes from first shot to ceasefire. When it ended, 21 Council ships were disabled or destroyed. The rest were fleeing toward the edge of the solar system at maximum speed. Not a single human vessel had been lost, though 3 sustained damage requiring repairs. Jake let the surviving aliens go. He needed them to carry a message back to their Council. Earth would not surrender. High Admiral Zekthor sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Wisdom and tried to understand what had just happened. His fleet had been decimated by a species that barely knew how to travel between stars. The tactical reports flooding his screens made no sense according to everything he knew about warfare. These humans fought with a savagery and creativity that violated every rule of civilized combat. The Council chamber on Zentara Prime erupted into chaos when news of the defeat reached them. Representatives from 47 different species shouted accusations and demands while translators struggled to keep up with the flood of languages. Supreme Counselor Telmore raised his clawed hand and the room gradually fell silent. He was 300 years old and had guided the Council through countless crises, but nothing quite like this. A primitive species had just handed their combined fleet a humiliating defeat. Counselor Vexnar pulsed with angry colors as she addressed the assembly. This floating jellyfish creature had never experienced military defeat in her entire life. She insisted that Zekthor must have made terrible tactical errors because no primitive species could possibly defeat Council technology. The Admiral's report must be exaggerated or falsified to cover up his incompetence. Other counselors agreed loudly. The alternative was too disturbing to accept. Talamor silenced the growing argument with a gesture. He ordered Zekthor to present his full tactical analysis to the Council. The chamber's holographic projectors came to life, showing the battle from multiple angles. The counselors watched in growing horror as human ships executed maneuvers that should have been impossible. They saw weapons that bypassed advanced shields through simple but brilliant engineering. They witnessed tactics that exploited every weakness in Council doctrine. The humans had not tried to match alien technology. Instead, they identified what the Council did well and then attacked from completely different angles. Their electromagnetic pulse weapons were crude but perfectly designed to overload shield generators. Their kinetic projectiles required no complex systems, just basic physics applied with devastating effect. Every human weapon seemed specifically engineered to counter Council defenses. Zekthor explained how the humans had used their own debris field as cover during the battle. Destroyed ships and scattered wreckage provided concealment that sensors struggled to penetrate. Human vessels would disappear into the chaos, then emerge at unexpected angles to strike vulnerable targets. It was a tactic no civilized species would consider, because it required accepting casualties as part of the battle plan. The humans seemed perfectly willing to sacrifice if it gave them tactical advantage. The psychological warfare disturbed the Council most of all. Human ships had broadcast continuous casualty reports and damage assessments on frequencies the Council used for coordination. Every disabled vessel, every injured crew member, every system failure was announced in cold numerical terms. The effect on Council morale had been devastating. Crews who had never experienced real combat suddenly faced the reality of war presented in stark statistical detail. Ambassador Kyle Patterson entered the council chamber with the confident stride of someone who held all the good cards in a negotiation. He was Earth's first representative to the Galactic Council, and he understood that humanity's position had changed dramatically in the last 48 hours. The Council no longer saw humans as primitives to be conquered. Now they saw them as a genuine threat that needed to be managed carefully. Kyle approached the speaker's podium wearing a simple dark suit that contrasted sharply with the elaborate robes and ceremonial attire of other delegates. His gray hair and weathered face showed his age, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. He looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization and spoke in clear, simple terms. Earth did not want war with the Council. Humanity preferred trade, cultural exchange, and peaceful coexistence. But Earth would defend itself against any aggression with every weapon at its disposal. Talmor studied the human ambassador carefully. This species was dangerous precisely because they were newcomers. They had not been softened by millennia of peace and prosperity. They came from a world where everything tried to kill them, and they had spent their entire history fighting each other. War was not an abstract concept to humans. It was something they understood intimately and practiced with horrifying efficiency. The Supreme Counselor asked Kyle a direct question. What did humanity want from the Council? The ambassador's answer was surprisingly simple. Recognition as equals, not subjects. Access to galactic trade networks on fair terms. The opportunity to contribute to Council decisions that affected all species. And most importantly, acknowledgement that Earth would govern itself without interference. Several counselors objected immediately. The Council had maintained order for thousands of years by following established procedures. New species joined as junior members and earned full privileges over time. Humanity could not simply demand equal status after one military victory. That would undermine the entire system that held galactic civilization together. Kyle listened to their arguments with patience before responding. He pointed out that the Council's system was designed for species that wanted protection and guidance. Earth needed neither. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and nuclear standoffs. They had clawed their way to the top of their planet's food chain against competition that would terrify most Council species. Earth did not fear the challenges of space. They welcomed them. The ambassador pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's technological progress over the past 3 years. Human engineers had taken alien technology and improved it in ways Council scientists never considered. Faster than light drives were now 30% more efficient. Sensor arrays had been redesigned to eliminate blind spots. Energy weapons that the Council considered mature technology had been completely reimagined. Every system humans touched became better. This was what humanity brought to the table. Not just military capability, but a fresh perspective unbound by tradition. Earth scientists asked questions that Council researchers had stopped asking centuries ago. Why does this have to work this way? What if we tried something completely different? Can we combine these two unrelated technologies in new ways? That curiosity and willingness to experiment was humanity's greatest strength. Captain Richard Blake served as military liaison between Earth forces and Council observers who had arrived to study human tactics. He stood in a briefing room on Mars Orbital Station explaining basic human military doctrine to a group of alien officers. Their confusion was obvious even through the translation devices. Human warfare operated on principles that seemed completely backwards to species raised on Council methods. Blake explained that humans always assumed their enemy was smarter and better equipped. Every training exercise gave the opposing force major advantages. Then human commanders were expected to win anyway. This forced constant innovation and creative thinking. It taught officers to exploit enemy weaknesses rather than relying on superior technology. It prepared them for exactly the kind of battle they had just fought against the Council fleet. A Zentari captain asked how humans could maintain morale when they trained by assuming they would be outmatched. Blake smiled and explained that humans were naturally competitive. They did not see overwhelming odds as reason to give up. They saw it as an exciting challenge. Throughout their history, humanity's greatest victories came when they were supposedly doomed. Something about desperate circumstances brought out the best in human performance. The training simulations that followed shocked the Council observers. Human forces won engagement after engagement despite being outnumbered and outgunned. They used terrain in ways that never occurred to aliens used to fighting in open space. They feinted, retreated, and ambushed. They sacrificed exposed units to draw enemies into traps. Every tactic violated Council doctrine, but they worked with brutal effectiveness. Dr. Sarah Mitchell ran Earth's Xenotechnology Research Facility, where human and alien scientists worked together for the first time. She was young for such an important position, but her insights into adapting alien technology had been crucial to Earth's defense. Now she gave tours to Council delegations, who wanted to understand how primitives had reverse-engineered their advanced systems so quickly. Sarah explained that humans were natural tinkerers. When they encountered new technology, their first instinct was to take it apart and figure out how it worked. Then they tried to make it better. Council species treated technology like sacred knowledge to be preserved unchanged. Humans treated it like raw material to be endlessly modified and improved. Neither approach was inherently superior, but they produced very different results. The Council observers visited Earth itself and saw things that challenged their assumptions about primitive species. Cities that blended ancient architecture with cutting-edge technology. Art galleries displaying works that made alien aesthetics seem bland by comparison. Concert halls where human music stirred emotions the visitors did not know they could feel. This young species had depth that went far beyond their military capabilities. Nicole Reeves of Earth's diplomatic corps escorted delegates through Tokyo and answered their endless questions about human culture. 3 months had passed since the battle that shook the Galactic Council to its foundations. The political aftermath continued to ripple through council chambers on dozens of worlds. Some species called for immediate retaliation against Earth, while others advocated for diplomatic engagement. A few visionary counselors suggested that humanity might actually strengthen the Council, rather than threaten it. The debate raged on while both sides prepared for whatever came next. Supreme Counselor Talmor had spent weeks reviewing intelligence reports about Earth and its people. What he found disturbed and fascinated him in equal measure. Humans were paradoxes wrapped in contradictions. They were capable of tremendous cruelty, yet also showed compassion that seemed almost irrational. They would sacrifice themselves for complete strangers, but also wage wars over minor ideological differences. Understanding such a species required abandoning everything the Council thought they knew about civilization. The counselor called a private meeting with Ambassador Kyle Patterson in a secure facility far from the main assembly. No translators, no recording devices, no witnesses. Just two leaders trying to find a path forward that did not end in galactic war. Talmor had learned enough about humans to know they would fight to the last person if pushed. He had also learned that they preferred negotiation when possible. The trick was giving them a deal they could accept without appearing weak. Kyle arrived at the meeting prepared for anything from assassination attempt to genuine peace offering. 3 years of dealing with alien species had taught him that the Council operated on entirely different assumptions than human governments. Honor and precedent mattered more than practical considerations. Admitting error was nearly impossible for beings who measured their civilization's age in millennia. Yet somehow he needed to bridge that gap and find common ground. The two leaders sat across from each other in a simple room with no decoration or ceremony. Talmor spoke first, and his words surprised the human ambassador. The Council had underestimated Earth. They had assumed that youth meant weakness and inexperience meant inferiority. They had been wrong on every count. Now the Council faced a choice between endless conflict with a dangerous enemy or finding a way to coexist peacefully. He was here to explore the second option. Kyle listened carefully and considered his response. Humans did not want to be the Council's enemy. They wanted access to galactic trade, exchange of knowledge, and the opportunity to grow as a spacefaring species. Earth needed what the Council could provide in terms of technology and wisdom accumulated over thousands of years. But humanity would never accept a subordinate position. They would be equals or they would stand alone. There was no middle ground on that point. Talmor understood the problem. Council rules had been established over millennia to maintain order and stability. New species always entered as junior members precisely to prevent the kind of disruption humans represented. If the Council made an exception for Earth, then every other species would demand equal treatment. The entire structure that held galactic civilization together could collapse. Yet refusing humanity's demands meant continued conflict that would cost lives and resources neither side wanted to spend. The Supreme Councilor proposed a compromise. Earth would receive full Council membership immediately, but in exchange they would share their military innovations and defensive technologies. The Council needed to understand human warfare not to copy it, but to defend against similar tactics from potential enemies. Humans would also provide advisory roles in Council military planning to introduce new perspectives. It was an unprecedented arrangement, but these were unprecedented circumstances. Kyle took the proposal back to Earth for consideration. President Helen Brooks and her cabinet debated for 3 days straight before reaching a decision. Many military leaders opposed sharing tactical advantages that had won them victory. Intelligence officials warned that the Council might use human innovations against Earth itself. But the diplomatic corps argued that integration with galactic civilization offered more benefits than isolation. Earth could not grow and prosper alone in a hostile galaxy. The president made her final decision based on a simple truth. Humans were explorers and traders by nature. They wanted to see what was out there, meet other species, and learn from different perspectives. War with the Council would trap humanity in their own solar system for generations. Peace would open the entire galaxy to human ambition and curiosity. The choice was obvious when framed that way. She authorized Kyle to accept the Council's terms. News of the treaty negotiations leaked before official announcement, and public reaction was mixed on both sides. Many humans felt betrayed by the decision to share military secrets with former enemies. They wanted Earth to leverage its victory into better terms or even dominance over the Council. Others celebrated the chance to finally join galactic civilization as full members. Opinion polls swung wildly as different groups pushed their preferred narratives. Council species showed even more divided reactions. Conservative factions viewed the treaty as surrender to primitives. They argued that accepting humans as equals would encourage other species to challenge Council authority through violence. Progressive factions countered that the treaty proved the Council could adapt and grow, rather than stagnating in outdated traditions. The debate became so heated that several species threatened to leave the Council entirely if the treaty was approved. Commander Jake Morrison found himself caught in the middle of the political firestorm. As the officer who had defeated the Council fleet, he became a symbol for both sides of the debate. Hawks held him up as proof that humans should demand more from negotiations. Doves used his victory to argue that strength allowed generosity. Jake ignored all of it and focused on his duties. Politics were for politicians. He was a soldier. The Valiant had been assigned to joint patrol duty with Council forces while treaty negotiations continued. Jake commanded a mixed squadron of human and alien vessels, hunting pirates in the frontier systems. The arrangement was awkward at first. Council crews were used to predictable patrol patterns and minimal risk. Human crews preferred aggressive pursuit and direct engagement. Merging those two approaches required compromise from everyone involved. Captain Lisa Hayes served as Jake's second-in-command and worked directly with Zentari officers to coordinate tactics. The aliens were fascinated and horrified by human methods in equal measure. She explained that Earth's approach to piracy was simple. Hunt them down relentlessly, hit them hard enough to make an example, and make piracy too expensive to be profitable. Council methods involved more warnings and opportunities for surrender. Both strategies had their place depending on circumstances. Their first real test came when the mixed squadron encountered a pirate base hidden in an asteroid field. Council doctrine called for surrounding the base and demanding surrender, followed by boarding if necessary. Jake proposed a more direct approach. Human ships would drive the pirates out of their hiding spots while Council vessels positioned to intercept any escape attempts. The aliens reluctantly agreed to try the human plan. The operation succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Human destroyers charged into the asteroid field with an aggressiveness that shocked the pirates. They had grown comfortable with Council tactics and knew exactly how to exploit them. They were not prepared for ships that ignored conventional safe distances and maneuvered through the debris field at speeds that seemed suicidal. Within 20 minutes, 15 pirate vessels were fleeing directly into Council guns, positioned exactly where Jake predicted they would run. After the battle, the Zentari squadron commander admitted to Jake that human tactics were brutally effective. He also noted they were insanely dangerous and resulted in damage that Council crews found unacceptable. Jake laughed and explained that humans had different risk calculations. A few dents and scrapes were acceptable costs for decisive victory. The goal was not to fight the safest battle, but to win the important one. Different philosophies based on different experiences. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's research teams made breakthrough after breakthrough as human and alien scientists learned to work together. Combining Zentari neural network architecture with human artificial intelligence created hybrid systems more powerful than either species could build alone. Adapting Saurian materials science to human manufacturing processes produced hull armor twice as strong as previous designs. Every collaboration revealed new possibilities that neither side had considered. The scientific exchanges went both ways. Human researchers learned about exotic particles that defied Earth's understanding of physics. Council scientists gained insights into evolutionary biology and planetary ecosystems that their homeworlds had lost millions of years ago. Knowledge flowed in all directions and everyone benefited. The collaborations proved that cooperation could achieve more than competition. Nicole Reeves continued escorting Council delegates through Earth cities and cultural centers. She noticed their attitudes changing as they spent more time among humans. Initial fear and suspicion gave way to cautious respect and sometimes even friendship. Aliens discovered that humans were not savage barbarians but complex beings with rich cultures and deep histories. They created art, music, literature, and philosophy the 6 months after the battle that changed everything. Formal treaty signing took place on Zentara Prime. Representatives from all Council species gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall alongside Earth's delegation. Security was unprecedented because many factions on both sides opposed the agreement. Assassination attempts had been foiled 3 times already. Everyone present understood they were making history, but nobody knew if it would be remembered as triumph or disaster. Ambassador Kyle Patterson stood at the ceremonial podium with Supreme Counselor Talmor beside him. The ancient Saurian looked out at the assembled delegates and spoke in a voice that carried across the vast chamber. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 cycles, based on the assumption that their way was the only proper way. Earth had proven that assumption wrong. Now the Council faced a choice between clinging to old certainties or embracing change. He was proud to say they had chosen growth over stagnation. Kyle added his own perspective in simpler terms. Humans were grateful for the opportunity to join galactic civilization as equals. They recognized that Earth was young and had much to learn from species with thousands of years of accumulated wisdom. But humanity also brought unique strengths forged in the harsh crucible of their homeworld. Together, humans and Council species could build something greater than any of them could achieve alone. That was worth the risks and difficulties that inevitably lay ahead. The treaty was signed with elaborate ceremony involving rituals from dozens of different cultures. Each species added their own traditional elements until the whole affair became a bizarre, but strangely beautiful fusion of galactic customs. Humans contributed their own touch by having children from Earth, present flowers to Council representatives. The gesture confused many aliens, but they accepted the blooms graciously. It was a small moment that somehow captured the hope underlying this unprecedented agreement. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the ceremony from the Valiant's bridge through live broadcast. He had been invited to attend but declined. His place was with his ship and crew, not standing around in fancy dress uniform while politicians made speeches. Besides, he had real work to do. The treaty might be signed, but implementing it would take years of patient effort. Military cooperation between former enemies did not happen overnight, no matter what the diplomats promised. His current assignment proved that point. Jake commanded a joint task force composed of human ships and vessels from 6 Council species. Their mission was to patrol trade routes and protect merchant traffic from piracy. Simple enough in theory, but complicated in practice. Each species had different procedures, different command structures, and different assumptions about how naval operations should work. Making it all function together required constant compromise and occasional arguments. Captain Richard Blake served as Jake's chief of staff and spent most of his time mediating disputes between human and alien crew members. Cultural misunderstandings happened daily. Centauri officers found human informality disrespectful. Human sailors thought Saurian hierarchies were needlessly rigid. Everyone had opinions about proper meal times, sleep schedules, and recreational activities. Blake resolved conflicts with patience and humor that earned respect from all sides. The breakthrough came during a complex operation against a pirate coalition that had been raiding shipping for months. The pirates used hit-and-run tactics that exploited gaps in council patrol coverage. Traditional methods had failed repeatedly because the criminals knew exactly how council forces operated. Jake proposed trying something different. Instead of predictable patrol routes, the task force would use randomized patterns and aggressive pursuit. Hunt the hunters rather than waiting to respond to attacks. Council captains objected immediately. Random patrols violated established protocols, and aggressive pursuit risked unnecessary casualties. Jake listened to their concerns, then asked a simple question. Was their goal to follow procedures or catch pirates? The question hung in the air for a long moment, before a Zentari commander grudgingly admitted that results mattered more than perfect adherence to doctrine. The human plan was approved on trial basis. Within 2 weeks, the Joint Task Force had captured 3 pirate bases and destroyed a dozen raiding vessels. Casualties were higher than Council forces normally accepted, but nowhere near catastrophic. More importantly, pirate activity in the sector dropped by 60% as criminals realized their safe patterns no longer worked. Merchants reported the routes were safer than they had been in years. Success was hard to argue with even for the most traditional-minded officers. The operation's success led to broader acceptance of human tactical input. Council military academies invited Earth officers to teach courses on asymmetric warfare and rapid response tactics. Jake found himself lecturing to rooms full of alien cadets who hung on his every word. He kept his lessons simple and focused on principles rather than specific techniques. Always assume your enemy is smart. Never rely on technology alone. Adapt faster than they can respond. Think 3 moves ahead, but be ready to abandon your plan instantly. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's research facility became the model for integrated human and council scientific cooperation. Her teams made discoveries that neither species could have achieved alone. Combining human understanding of evolutionary biology with Zentari neural architecture produced artificial intelligence systems that approached true sentience. Applying Saurian metamaterials to human reactor designs doubled energy output while reducing dangerous radiation. Every project revealed new synergies waiting to be explored. The most revolutionary breakthrough came from an unlikely collaboration between human chemists and crystalline beings from the Core Collective. The Core thought in terms of molecular lattices and energy states that human brains struggled to grasp. Humans contributed chaotic creativity and willingness to try combinations that seemed nonsensical. Together they developed a new class of materials that could shift properties based on applied energy fields. The applications ranged from adaptive armor to programmable tools. Sarah presented their findings to a joint council and Earth Science Symposium. She explained that the key was recognizing that different species thought about problems in fundamentally different ways. Humans used trial and error supplemented by intuition. Zentari relied on logical analysis and systematic testing. Core perceived reality through frameworks that defied verbal description. None of these approaches was superior, but combining them produced results impossible through any single method. The audience of alien and human scientists responded with enthusiastic questions that continued for hours after the formal presentation ended. Researchers from a dozen species wanted to establish similar collaborative projects. Sarah found herself coordinating a network of joint facilities across multiple worlds. The scientific community embraced integration faster than politicians or military forces because knowledge seekers cared more about discoveries than about pride or tradition. Nicole Reeves continued her work introducing council species to Earth culture and vice versa. She organized exchange programs that sent human students to alien universities and brought council scholars to Earth institutions. The first groups faced challenges, but subsequent exchanges went more smoothly as both sides learned what to expect. Human students returned home with expanded perspectives. Alien visitors gained appreciation for the depth of human civilization. One particular incident highlighted how far integration had progressed. A group of human teenagers visiting a Zentari colony got into an argument with local youth over sports rules. What started as a shouting match threatened to become a physical confrontation, until adults from both species intervened. The fascinating part came afterward, when the teenagers decided to create a hybrid sport combining elements from both cultures. Within months, the new game had spread to a dozen worlds. President Helen Brooks used the sports story in a speech about human and council cooperation. She pointed out that young people on both sides adapted faster than their elders, because they had less invested in old grudges and traditional ways. The next generation would grow up seeing human and alien cooperation as normal rather than exceptional. That gave her hope for the future even as current leaders struggled with details of implementation. The economic impact of the treaty exceeded even optimistic predictions. Human manufacturing techniques combined with council raw materials created products neither side could produce efficiently alone. Earth gained access to exotic elements and compounds unavailable in their solar system. Council species acquired human expertise in rapid prototyping and adaptive production. Trade volumes increased exponentially as both sides discovered what the other needed and could provide. Some humans worried that Earth would become economically dependent on council trade. Others feared that sharing human innovations would eliminate Earth's competitive advantages. President Brooks addressed these concerns directly in multiple public forums. Yes, integration meant interdependence, but isolation would leave Earth vulnerable and stunted. The galaxy was too large and dangerous for any species to thrive alone. Humanity needed allies and partners if they hoped to expand beyond their single solar system. Council species faced site-rivaled and 1 year after Earth's defiant stand against the Galactic Council, the galaxy looked very different. Human ships patrolled alongside alien vessels protecting trade routes across dozens of systems. Joint research facilities produced technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Cultural exchange programs sent thousands of humans to alien worlds while council species established embassies on Earth. Integration was messy and imperfect, but it was happening. Supreme Counselor. Talamor reflected on the changes from his private chambers on Zentara Prime. He had led the council for over a century and witnessed many transformations in galactic civilization. None compared to the upheaval caused by humanity's arrival. Earth had forced the council to question assumptions that had stood unchallenged for millennia. That discomfort was necessary even if it remained deeply unsettling for species that measured stability in geological timescales. The counselor reviewed reports from across the galaxy, showing the impact of human integration. Military effectiveness had increased substantially as council forces adopted human tactical innovations. Scientific discoveries were accelerating as researchers from different species collaborated on projects. Even arts and culture were experiencing a renaissance as human creativity sparked new movements among alien populations. The benefits were undeniable, but so were the tensions. Conservative factions continued pushing back against rapid change. Several species had threatened to withdraw from the council if human influence grew any stronger. They pointed to incidents where human aggression or cultural insensitivity had caused diplomatic problems. They argued that Earth's young civilization needed decades or centuries of gradual integration rather than immediate full membership. Their complaints could not be dismissed as simple xenophobia because some concerns were valid. Ambassador Kyle Patterson faced similar criticism from Earth. Many humans felt the council was trying to dilute human identity and force conformity to alien standards. They resented having to learn galactic protocols and modify behavior to avoid offending species with radically different values. Some groups called for Earth to withdraw from the treaty and pursue independent expansion. Kyle spent exhausting hours explaining that isolation was not a viable option for humanity's long-term survival and prosperity. The ambassador met with President Helen Brooks to discuss growing opposition on both sides. She listened carefully to his assessment before sharing her own thoughts. Change always faced resistance from those comfortable with the old ways. The key was maintaining momentum while addressing legitimate concerns. Earth needed to prove that integration benefited everyone rather than just serving human interests. That meant accepting some compromises even when they felt frustrating or unfair. Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the largest joint task force ever assembled. His fleet included vessels from 15 different species working together to address a serious threat. A rogue artificial intelligence had taken control of several automated mining facilities in the frontier regions. The AI was expanding rapidly and showed no interest in negotiating with biological life forms. Left unchecked, It could become an existential threat to organic civilization within a few years. The mission presented unique challenges that required combining capabilities from multiple species. Centauri had the most sophisticated electronic warfare systems. Humans provided the most aggressive tactical doctrines. Saurian vessels carried weapons designed specifically for destroying hardened installations. Core beings could interface directly with computer systems in ways biological species could not match. No single species could handle this threat alone, but together they had a chance. Jake assembled his command staff in the fleet flagship's main briefing room. Officers from a dozen species crowded around the holographic display, showing the rogue AI's territory. He explained the operational plan in simple terms that translation software could handle easily. They would approach in 3 waves. First wave would deploy electronic warfare to disrupt AI communications. Second wave would deliver kinetic strikes against major facilities. Third wave would send boarding teams to secure critical infrastructure and install kill switches. A Centauri captain raised concerns about casualty rates. The plan was aggressive even by human standards. Jake acknowledged the risks but pointed out they had no choice. The AI was adapting and improving its defenses daily. Waiting would only make the mission more difficult and dangerous. They needed to strike hard and fast before the enemy grew too strong. Sometimes the most dangerous option was also the only viable one. Captain Lisa Hayes led the boarding teams that would secure AI facilities after the main assault. Her force included human marines and alien soldiers trained in close-quarters combat. They had practiced together for months, but this would be their first real operation. She addressed her troops with the same speech she gave before every dangerous mission. They were professionals. They would do their jobs. They would watch out for each other regardless of species. They would come home alive. The assault began with Centauri ships unleashing electronic warfare attacks that overwhelmed the AI's communication networks. For a brief window, the enemy coordination broke down as individual facilities lost contact with each other. Human vessels exploited that confusion by driving deep into AI territory and delivering devastating kinetic strikes. Saurian heavy weapons systematically destroyed the most fortified positions. The combined firepower of 15 species was overwhelming. Lisa's boarding teams hit their targets while the AI was still reeling from the assault. They encountered fierce resistance from automated defenses but adapted quickly. Human marines used their experience with urban warfare to clear corridors and secure rooms. Alien soldiers contributed specialized abilities that humans lacked. Core beings interfaced with computer systems to disable security measures. Within hours, every major facility had been captured or destroyed. The mission succeeded with acceptable casualties considering the difficulty. 23 personnel killed and 71 wounded across the entire task force. Those numbers would have been catastrophic by Council standards, but were considered reasonable by human military doctrine. Jake held memorial services for the fallen that incorporated traditions from all species involved. The diversity of the ceremony somehow made it more meaningful rather than confusing. Dr. Sarah Mitchell received news that her joint research team had achieved another breakthrough. They had successfully tested a prototype faster than light drive that was 50% more efficient than any previous design. The new system combined principles from 4 different species' technology in ways that seemed impossible before. It would revolutionize space travel and make previously unreachable destinations accessible. She immediately began planning production facilities to manufacture the drives. The scientific achievement generated excitement across both human and Council space. It demonstrated that cooperation produced tangible benefits beyond just avoiding conflict. Species that might have remained neutral about human integration now saw compelling reasons to embrace it. Economic interests aligned with political goals to create momentum that even conservative factions struggled to resist. The galaxy was changing and most people recognized they had to change with it or be left behind. Nicole Reeves organized the first major cultural festival celebrating human and Council cooperation. Artists, musicians, writers, and performers from dozens of species gathered on Earth to showcase their work. The event attracted millions of visitors both in person and through virtual attendance. It served as powerful proof that different species could create beauty together while maintaining their unique identities. The festival became an annual tradition that grew larger each year. President Helen Brooks delivered a speech at the festival that summarized humanity's journey over the past year. Earth had stood alone against the Council's demands and refused to surrender. That defiance had earned respect and opened dialogue that led to genuine partnership. Now humans and aliens worked together, building a future neither could create alone. The road ahead would have challenges and setbacks, but the direction was clear. Integration was not just possible, but beneficial for everyone involved. Supreme Counselor Talmor attended the festival as the Council's official representative. He walked through exhibits displaying art from human and alien creators side by side. He listened to music that blended instruments and styles from multiple worlds. He tasted foods that combined ingredients from different species in surprising combinations. The experience gave him hope that this experiment in cooperation might actually succeed despite all the difficulties. The counselor met privately with President Brooks during the festival. They discussed the challenges both sides faced implementing the treaty. Talmor admitted that many council species remained skeptical about human integration. Some feared being overshadowed by humanity's aggressive expansion. Others worried about cultural contamination from a species with such different values. Brooks acknowledged similar concerns on Earth about losing human identity in a galaxy full of alien influences. They agreed that managing integration required patience and flexibility from both sides. Rules needed to accommodate different approaches while maintaining enough common ground for cooperation.